Welcome to Reformed Thinking. In this explainer, we're getting into a pretty big question. Why do we even need the Bible? I mean, if you can see God's glory pretty much everywhere you look, why did he have to give us a book? Right. To put it another way, is looking at the universe enough? Can you just look up at the stars or out at the ocean and from that alone get to a real saving knowledge of God? It's a huge question. Well, the Bible itself gives us a starting point. Psalm 19 is clear. Creation absolutely points to a creator. There's a certain glory that's visible to every single person on earth. We call this general revelation. So yeah, God's presence is on full display in everything he's made. And this general revelation, it's enough to hold every single person accountable. It shows our own ingratitude for what's staring us right in the face. On that count, nobody gets an excuse. Okay, but here's where we hit a really crucial distinction. Even though this revelation is universal, everyone sees it, it's also what's called insufficiently effective. It does one job really well. It leaves us without excuse, but it just can't bring us to a saving knowledge of God. So let's dig into that. Why isn't just looking at the world enough? Let's break down the limitations that keep this general revelation from being what we need for salvation. On one side, you have creation showing God's power and majesty, for sure. It's enough to make us accountable for not being thankful. But here's what it can't do. It can't fix the problem inside us, our spiritual dullness. And it can't reveal the one specific truth we desperately need, that God is also our Redeemer. You see, the problem isn't with what God has revealed in creation. The problem is with us. Our minds are described as feeble, dull, with really weak vision. We forget things, we slide into all kinds of errors, and we end up judging God's incredible works by our own messed-up standards, not by his truth. So, knowing this about us, what did God do? He provides a solution. He gives us what's called a special gift on top of general revelation. His written word, the Holy Scriptures. And this doesn't get rid of creation's witness, it just corrects our flawed way of seeing it. And this makes Scripture incredibly personal. Think about it. Creation is a mute teacher. It shows, but it doesn't speak. But in the Word, God actually opens his own most hallowed lips to talk directly to his people. It's a totally different kind of communication. And this is the key thing to get. Scripture is another and better help. It's an addition, something extra, designed to point us correctly to the Creator. It doesn't cancel out what we see in the world. It brings it into focus. So how does it do that? How does Scripture bring that kind of clarity? There are a couple of really helpful metaphors that explain how it works. The first one is that Scripture is like a pair of spectacles or glasses. Just like someone with blurry vision needs glasses to read a book clearly, we need the help of Scripture to properly read what creation is saying about God. It corrects our flawed spiritual vision. And once we put on these spectacles, Scripture does three things. First, it takes all that confused knowledge about God that's already rattling around in our minds and gathers it together. Second, it gets rid of our natural dullness. And finally, by doing those two things, it shows us the one true God with total clarity. Here's a second metaphor. Think of God's glory as this vast, inexplicable labyrinth, a giant maze. Without a guide, you just get lost in there forever. Scripture is the thread that leads you through the maze and gets you safely to the right path. Okay, so this all leads us to one final, really important distinction. Scripture doesn't just give us one kind of knowledge about God, it actually provides two different kinds. First up, there's the knowledge of God as the creator and ruler of everything. This helps us tell the difference between the one true God and all the false ones we invent. But then there's a second, deeper, inner knowledge that actually brings dead souls to life. And that's knowing God as Redeemer in the person of Jesus Christ. That's the knowledge that leads to salvation. So, where does that leave us? The conclusion is that any right knowledge of God starts with obedience. It begins when we humbly accept what God says about himself in his own word. We have to become students of the Scripture. And that brings us to the final question to think about. If Scripture is the pair of glasses we need, if it's the thread through the maze, what happens when we try to go it alone? Given our natural tendency to get everything wrong, where does the mind end up wandering when it doesn't have that guide?